right, good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. We've got a fairly a short series of reports, but important reports, and we get started. We haven't seen Gail Morris in a while, so Gail and Kevin are going to start out with a presentation on Together We Are.
Good morning. I want to thank you for this opportunity to talk about messaging around public education in Arkansas. My teammate, Kevin Briggs, and I have worked in communications for quite a while, and we have covered a lot of different initiatives, campaigns, programs, get out the word efforts in the agency. The School of Innovation video series that we did for 2 years, as well as the No Limits campaign that we did to encourage teenagers to take the ACT more than once. And in all of the work that we've done, we always tried to connect it back to the thing that we had done previously. And the big question for us was always, what's the message? What are we trying to tell people about public education in Arkansas, and how does this all fit together? So in talking about it, we would work together, talk about it, drift away, come back to it. And in the work that we've done, we've had an amazing opportunity to meet some incredible educators and some incredible students and tell some really great stories about the things that are happening in schools. But there was no cohesive message for us. And when we joined Tina Smith's team and started learning more about PLCs and high reliability schools and culture versus climate and support and celebration, we realized that the things that Kevin and I have been talking about and this new information really led us back to the department's vision statement, which is that the Department of Education is transforming Arkansas to lead the nation in student-focused education. And what that did was really gave us a anchor point. And we realized in looking around the agency and around the state that too few of our team members really understood and knew what the department's vision, mission, and goals were, that our messaging to our staff and to our external audiences was fractured. And this confused our audiences, and in some cases left staff members and our stakeholders feeling marginalized and discounted. So that led us to the creation of Together We Are. This vision for us is all about moving forward, moving education forward, gaining support for public education and the work that we do here at the agency. Our key messages behind Together We Are is that all ADE team members are committed to achieving the mission, vision, and goals, that we are working together, that their programs are not in competition, but it is to support and complement one another. And that transforming education in Arkansas cannot be the sole responsibility of one agency, one unit, one division. It is a statewide effort. It takes the support and the participation of all citizens. So with Together We Are, it's a way for us to improve the culture here in the department. It gives us an overarching idea that we can all share and support. It's an open-ended statement, if you will, and the growth potential for the effort is endless. It's scalable, it's flexible, and we can make it as big or as small as we need it to be. Together We Are, with the open-ended statement, you can use it improving student reading. Together We Are supporting best practices. Together We Are supporting innovative programs. But first things first, we have to begin here at home. Coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, working together is success. So internally, we have a vision for posters, events. Those are just some of the ideas that we've put on the table. One of the things that we really wanted to do was find a way to bring staff members together. And we brought back a project from the early 2000s that we did, which was mock magazine covers. And this is a way to get a really fantastic photo from my teammate, Kevin Briggs, put together a mock magazine cover, and gives you a little something about that person and where they work in the organization and something special about them. So these are just a few examples of the work that Kevin did back in the day. But we want to bring that back, and we did recently, and our first cover was Dr. Pfeffer. What we added this time around was a little bit of information about them. Just simple questions. What's your favorite color? What's your favorite movie? And it may seem simple and fun and very elementary, but what it does is give staff members a way to start conversations. If I can know a little bit about you when I see you in the hall, I can say, hey, that's my favorite movie too. Or hey, you know, I grew up there. So to build those connections, those relationships, if you will. And I think that if we get to know each other as people rather than titles, that we can go a long, long way. So this is Chantelle Williams, and she's going to be our cover for May. And it was really an exciting kind of photo shoot because we used one of our staffers, Valerie Jackson, has antique cars. So we took her antique car down to the Clinton Presidential Library, and we set it up, and we were doing the shoot, but it gave us a chance to interact with people that were out skateboarding and riding the scooters and walking their dogs. And it's like, hey, who are you with? What are you doing? And it gave us a chance to say, hey, we're with the Department of Education. And it was really fun, and it was different. It was getting out there, meeting people where they are. So externally, what we're looking at, those are some of the projects. Of course, social media, reaching out to other education associations, really stepping up our branding on social media as well. And I think that what we're trying to do is not so much take a message out to people, but to create an atmosphere where everyone can come together. And we had talked about creating an app or a forum or a blog or a website or something. But what we want to do is use the technology to erase the geography. If you have an issue in Blytheville and your community has come together and solved that issue, we want to find a way where we can share that, and as easy as possible, understanding that not everyone has access to a desktop computer. Not everybody is going to go to a website. So that's one of the challenges that I think that straight out the gate that I want to tackle with this effort. Everybody has a smartphone. So how do we leverage that to help in this effort? And I want to back up and say internally, I want to leverage the things that we already have in-house. Our email, our intranet, our monitors. There is a way to, I think they're underutilized, but we can utilize those things to help share the message with staff. So now we want to take the message beyond the education realm. And I really want, in my vision of what together we can be, to share this and gain the support of the communities in Arkansas, to gain the support of local governmental entities, to gain the support of business and industries, and just take it statewide. Oftentimes we talk about partnerships, and when school people talk about partnerships, it's really, sometimes we need a donation. But partnerships can mean so much more than that. It can mean access to do a photo shoot. It can mean inviting us out to talk. It can mean phone calls. So I don't want people to believe that it's just, when we say partners, we're just looking at dollar signs. And now if Dan, I'm going to back up and share this. In working through this, one of our first ideas in talking about partnerships was looking around and looking for places where natural bridges existed, where we could walk out and meet people halfway. So the first partner for us is the State Library. The State Library is a division of the department, but they kind of operate independently. And it was really a great opportunity to partner with some people that are committed to education, that are committed to literacy, that are committed to communities. And now I'd like to share a videotape message from the director of the State Library.
Hello, I'm Carolyn Ashcraft, Director of the Arkansas State Library. We're proud to partner with ADE and the Strategic Communications team on the Together We Are effort. By law, the State Library is a division of the Department of Education. However, over the years, we have operated with a great deal of autonomy. We were so very excited when ADE's Strategic Communications team contacted us about this amazing opportunity. Our public libraries have evolved over the years. Today's libraries are vital centers of information. They are the heart of community events and activities. They are places that bring together technology, training, and learning. Our work with Tina Smith, Kevin Briggs, and Gail Morris has been so rewarding. We're just taking the first few steps on this journey, but our combined efforts can make a big difference for Arkansas and our children. I want to encourage other agencies, offices, businesses, anyone to partner with ADE and the Strategic Communications team in this effort. With a shared vision and support for our children, we can transform Arkansas to lead the nation in student-focused education.
So that is Together We Are. And for me, can you imagine seeing our logo on sidewalks or on street signs or having it wrapped in someone's delivery van? But I think that really, in a nutshell, what Together We Are is about is community. It's about relationships. It's about building relationships in new ways and leveraging the relationships that we already have to help children, our children, their children, children that we will never meet. We can make a difference for them through this effort, I believe. And that concludes our report.
Thanks so much. Any questions, comments? Anybody to my left?
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to take an opportunity to brag on the team. Gail and Kevin and team have we really unleashed them in their creative side, and they have they've always been creative. This is something that I think Gail certainly, it's been on her mind, on her heart for some time, of how do we do a better job of really communicating that vision in a way that's not just here's information, but instead, how do you connect to the people internally and externally? And we're really excited about where we're headed with this, and thank you.
Thank you.
Gail, one question I have is really about the internal side, which I think is interesting one. And I'm probably moving into Ms. Chambers' turf here a bit, but in terms of gauging kind of the connectedness within the agency, in terms of the way in which folks really are kind of bonded to each other, but then also bonded to the agency, which is an important part of retention, of course. How have we tracked that or surveyed that across time? I'm just kind of curious what we've done to really kind of.
I'm not aware of any surveys. I think for me, the information and the feedback that I've received, and I've been here a few years, but I think it's more anecdotal. Mm-hmm. But you can, from the comments that you hear, the comments that, the conversations that you're a part of, I think that people were waiting for their initiative. When am I going to get my initiative, my big push? Mm-hmm. And I think with Together We Are, we're saying to them, you don't have to wait. Mm-hmm. This is your big push. You're part of something much bigger. But I do believe that we should, the more data that you have, the better decisions you can make. So I think that will be something that we need to look at. How do we track our success? And what does success look like number-wise for us?
To your point, needed to weigh in. I thought that was an excellent presentation. And when you look at what retains people and inspires or engages them, two things that always come up in every survey. The first is, do you like your manager? That's the number one reason people leave. It's not all the other things you tend to think of. And are you connected to the purpose? And that's everything that you just talked about, is the purpose, and helping people understand where they sit, how they connect to, and can lift their contribution to that purpose. It's so important. So, well done.
Thank you.
Great.
Can I just say, I love the presentation. I thought it was great. My only concern is not everyone knows who ADE is. And I didn't hear you use Arkansas Department of Education in this. And I'm just a little concerned about that. But otherwise, it was great.
And that identification is getting ready to change, because what you know now is Arkansas Department of Education. K-12 will be the division of elementary and secondary education under the new Department of Education, which will have a much broader umbrella. So some of those communication things, it's good timing to understand what are those designations, how will we need to communicate that to our stakeholders. So when you say ADE, it's going to mean something different,
Okay.
and it's going to take time to get accustomed to divisions, and K-12 being early and or elementary, secondary education, higher ed being the division of higher education, career ed being the division of career education, no longer having identity as individual cabinet level departments. So that's something that we will, as the governor talked yesterday about the transformation process, that's going to be critical in working with all these other agencies to make sure there's understanding across internally and externally of what do these things mean. Because right now we're at ground zero as far as I think even all the internal teams understanding what the changes are going to be. So that's something we will keep in mind as we develop the new communications going forward.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks.
Thanks, Gail. All right, next up, something we've been waiting on for a while, and this is the presentation from Prescott School District, and I'm going to turn it over to Tina Smith on this. Good morning.
Good morning. There's no way I can be as good as Gail. I'm so proud to be a member of their team. So you don't really want to hear from me. I just want to introduce the superintendent and assistant superintendent from Prescott School District to you. Mr. Robert Poole and Missy Wally are here, and they're going to share with you about their journey. They're close to finishing their second year in this process, and I know you wanted to visit with them because they are the one district that was in the first cohort. So unless you have specific questions for me regarding the project itself, I'm going to let them share with you.
That's great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate this opportunity to come and speak with you on behalf of professional learning communities for what's going on in Prescott, Arkansas. First, I'd like to say thank you for the job that all you do in the state of Arkansas, for making decisions on what's best for students. But what's best for students in the state of Arkansas. I know you have a very tough job, and I just want to applaud you for that, and thank you for everything that you do. With that being said, we are so grateful that we were a district-wide, we were selected as the first cohort and the only district-wide school to implement professional learning communities. It has made a huge impact for our students and for our whole teacher morale and for our whole school district. Okay. And where we were before is our teachers were so caught up in trying to do everything they could, trying to do everything that we could is covering standards throughout the whole year. You know, they had these, all these timelines. Boy, and the teacher at the end of the year, they stick out their chest, man, I got every standard covered at the end of the year. And we look back and, the question we should have been asking is how many students learned those standards over the course of the year? So what PLCs has done for us is shift the focus from the teaching to actually the learning of the students. And that's made a huge impact for our school district. Like I said, this is only our second year of it, but I can tell you before, every building was doing something different. You had elementary doing this, junior high doing this, high school doing this, then you had every hallway doing something different from that. Then you had every classroom doing something different from that. And what PLCs has done for us in the Prescott School District is got everyone together going the same direction on the same page. And I cannot tell you how valuable that is for our school district. You know, and I'm kind of embarrassed, you know, I've been in education for 20 years, you look back, you know, man, this is real simple. Why have we not already thought about this or done this? You know, and I'm sure everybody's asking the same question. You know, it's a lot of work. Don't get me wrong, it's a lot of work for PLCs to implement it, but it's very simple as well, because it makes common sense out of teaching and learning. And that's the approach we've took from and learned from it. And every Wednesday, we've dedicated the time from 2:30 to 3:30. Every teacher in our whole district is meeting in one place, and we're not doing anything but focusing on our PLCs. And I can't tell you what that's done for our whole school culture and our whole school climate. You know, I feel bad, really, for the schools that they've only selected for maybe one building in the first cohort. You know, this building or this grade level were selected as PLC, but we were district-wide. We're very fortunate that. I would hate to know that I had to, you know, because there's a lot of work being done to it. I'd hate to know that I'd had to go back into a whole other building of implementing PLCs, because you want to do it the first time and get everybody on board and move in the same direction. So, you know, I wish there was plenty of, a lot of them, I know money can solve a lot of things, but I would, if we had to do it again, I could have an unlimited budget. I would have every school district in the state do PLCs from the district-wide level. You know, instead of, you know, this building or this building. And I know we're piloting these things to see results, but I just see the difference it makes, you know, and I'm very fortunate and feel kind of guilty that, you know, we were selected, you know, district-wide in the whole state of Arkansas to implement PLCs. And I see the results it's doing for our teachers, for our building, and for our students. And to me, I'm so grateful for that. And I just wish every school district in the state of Arkansas had that same opportunity. You know, with that being said, also, in all due respect, the local co-ops that we have do not have the resources to implement PLCs in schools district-wide like Solution Tree has. I'm just going to be as honest with you as I possibly can. Solution Tree has done a phenomenal job. Tina Smith has done a phenomenal job of helping us through this process, and we could not have done it with them. I thought I knew what PLCs were before the PLC and Solution Tree came to our schools, but I did not. I did not have any idea the in-depth training and resources and knowledge that's provided from Solution Tree to implement PLCs the right way in schools. And this time, I'm going to be quiet and I'll let Missy Wally come forward and she'll sort of take a little more detail of what we're doing in the Prescott School District.
I'm going to ditto some of the things he said. I'm back to the short person. I'm going to ditto some of the things. Just thank you so much for allowing Prescott to go through this journey, because it has been a journey. And I've told several people this is probably, I think, my 25th or 26th year in education, and it's been a rebirth of my knowledge in education, what I thought I knew. But I also just want to say thank you to you, because I've taught in 5 different states, and Arkansas has got it together. And Gail presented Together We Are. You're living it. And that's one of the things that you can say it, but to watch someone live it, and I do see it. And I see professional learning communities not just happen in the school, but I see the Department of Ed doing a professional learning community. So that's nice to see that everything we approach, it's meeting the needs and the compliance. It's not a compliance. We are actively doing something that meets the needs of the students. So thank you very much. And I do want to say I'm an elementary teacher by nature, so standing here may be hard because I like to move around and I'm taught to actively monitor. So I'm going to stand here as still as I can, but that's hard for me to do. And I do want to tell the story because we have a journey. So I want to tell the story of Prescott and where we were and where we are and where we're going. So do I have a clicker? I have a clicker. And how to work that clicker. But let me go back for just a second, because the Together We Are is an overarching theme, but I want you to look at that logo, Impact the Pack. That was birthed out of professional learning communities when we were trying to find our focus. And everything that we do, we're impacting the pack. And that's the focus that we're taking with everything. So I think it's important to look at that logo. Why did we apply? So where were we? And I've been with Prescott for 4 years now. And when we came in, one of the things that Mr. Poole said, he's like, you know, we want to change. We want to change. And we needed a change. I mean, I felt like I'd walked into a high school from when I graduated in the high school in the 80s, and I thought, yeah, we do need to change. And it was exciting. I love change, but we didn't know how to change. We just knew that we needed to change. So let me tell you about Prescott. We're a small rural school district, about 1,000 students, K through 12. We have very high, low socioeconomic, 100% poverty rate. I mean, we're sitting very high. Low achievement scores, very low achievement scores. Not something we're proud of, but it's something we're working to improve. Third largest employer in Nevada County, right behind Firestone and Hines Trucking. So, big contributor to the community. The school has got to, in order for the community to thrive, the school needs to as well. A community full of curly wolf pride. We're an athletic school, and that's what we've been known for, and we're good at it. I mean, we have the curly wolf pride, and the kids, they want to be a curly wolf. They want to be a curly wolf, so and once it gets in your blood, I was not raised a curly wolf, but once it gets in your blood, it's hard to get out. A community and district who wants more for their students in their future, and they knew that they wanted more for their future. And that was what was exciting. So we didn't know how to do it, but we knew we needed something. So when we first started, you have this moral imperative, we've got to change, we've got to change. Now, when you go into change, you want to get that buy-in. We didn't have time. You just got to do something. So that's what we did. We did the flex mod scheduling. We have a little piece of that still in action right now. And then we did the school-wide enrichment, trying to get the motivation and the interest of the students. We tried, and we're still trying. We will continue to try. But when professional learning communities, in that application, I saw that come across in the commissioner's memo, and I thought, professional learning communities, I know what that is. And I've done that before when I was in Texas schools. I've got this. And so we started talking about it, and we were like, okay, this is a change we need to do. Let's talk about this as a district and how we can do that. So we applied. And we were determined to change had to occur, and we couldn't sit back and discuss it and wait. And that's, as our coach from Solution Tree, Dave, he said, a lot of times schools get stuck in that ready, aim, and they never fire. They discuss. And what we have found is when we walk out of every meeting, there's an action. We're ready to move forward. So we couldn't sit back and discuss it, so we applied and we got it. We got it in September of 2017. And so our journey began. And it was a journey. I had no idea what professional learning communities were. I just thought I knew. And professional learning communities, and that's something that, and I'm going to call it PLCs that's something that is changing our culture. It's not a program, and when we came in, everybody thought, this is a new program, this is something else, it's going to go away in a year or two. It's not going away in a year or two. It is the culture, and it's the foundation that we're building. Great organizations confront the brutal facts of our current reality. That was hard. The first thing we did is we did a needs assessment. We had someone come in, and he sat in a room, and he brought in board members, he brought in parents, he brought in students, staff, and I'd have some of the teachers come in, I think I made us look good. I'm like, I don't want you to make us look good. We've got to confront those brutal facts and say, okay, this is where we are. And we have got to face those current facts, and it's not a good place. We've got to change. And that, like I said, that was hard. What we've done, too, is when we started over. The first year is just building that foundation. It was just understanding what is PLC. And when you have this culture that has been built, years of a culture, undoing that culture is hard. So that's what we've been focused on for so long, is just for the last 2 years, is really undoing what we've known for so long. And Mr. Poole talked about the standards and how we've taught the standards, and giving up some of those standards is hard for some teachers. So just undoing that has been, it's been a process. So we've gone from purpose. This is just the mission, vision, and values and goals, and we've set that. We went through each process of that, because when it comes to where's your mission and vision statement, we go, it is on a poster in a hallway, and I didn't even realize it's on the board agenda every month. We had a mission and vision. Did we visit it? No, but it was what was on it was just that formal statement that we needed. So we went from working from purpose to on purpose and looking at those values. And understanding why do we exist. What we did know is at this point, we could not make this promise to the parents. It does not matter which teacher your child has at our school. If your child needs extra time and support to learn at high levels, we guarantee he or she will receive it. We couldn't make that promise. And we're still working on that promise. That's where your teacher requests come in. You know, I want that teacher on this hallway because I know that my child's going to go. Well, that's not what we want. We want a guaranteed and viable curriculum so that we don't do a teacher request because we know that what we're getting in this classroom, we're going to get in the classroom next to us. This is our new mission statement that came out of PLC's. Prescott School District's fundamental purpose is to ensure high levels of learning for all students. I put ensure and high and all in red, and there's a reason why, because that was a very lot of discussion, and we had a lot of conflict on putting those words. How are you going to ensure that we have high levels of learning? So talking about how to ensure, how are you going to ensure that the teacher next door is teaching the same thing next to this one? It's a mutual accountability. And when you're meeting with teams and you're looking at assessments, you're ensuring that what happens in this class isn't happening in that one. High levels. And taking that, my kid can't get that. You're telling me that all kids are going to learn this at high levels? Okay, I can get all kids to learn, but at high levels? So that was another word that we looked at and we said, okay, what does high mean to you? So looking at the Bloom's taxonomy, or depth of knowledge, you've got 4 depths of knowledge. Your high levels, grade level proficiency, it's at level 3. So we all said, okay, when we say high levels, we mean level 3. Depth of knowledge, 3. Then all students. Okay, I got it. Grade level proficiency. All students, though, I mean, really? You're talking about special ed? You're talking about, yes, all students. If they're expected to move out of their house one day and pay rent, we mean all students. So what are we going to do for all students? So those 3 words we did a lot of conversation about that to get those 3 words, but and it's in a lot of statements, but there's a lot of thought that went into this. This document came out of all of that planning, and you really can't see it because it's so small, but it's got our mission up there, but it's got our values, and our values are framed around the 4 questions that come from PLC. And then we have our wolf pack, which we show evidence of pretty much together we are. And then we've got our promises of our collective commitments, which is what helps us ensure. It's one that the teachers have to say, okay, all teams will have their operating norms. All teams will bring this, all teams. So we're holding each other accountable. What has changed and where we are? We have changed our focus from teaching to focus on learning, and Mr. Poole said this as well. We were looking at evaluations. We were looking, saying, okay, how are they teaching? Look, they're not actively monitoring. The students are doing, sometimes a teacher may be sitting, but they may be doing something that is engaging to the, if you see those students engaging, stop looking at the teacher's actions and look at the students' actions. Are they engaged? Are they doing something? So it wasn't us going in and going, gotcha, on the teacher. It was, what are the students doing? And so we did change the focus from teaching to learning, which has been a culture change. And it's not about covering the standards. It's about learning and making sure that the kids have mastery. We defined our essential standards and made sure that we said, okay, this is what's going to be mastered for this grade level. And so, for instance, 3rd grade has said this is going to be mastered, but in the same sense, 4th grade is looking at 3rd grade standards and they're saying, okay, these prerequisites need to be mastered before they come to us. So you've got that vertical alignment that's happening. But those essential standards are what they discuss when they come to their PLCs, not the standards that they still are required to teach all of the standards. So that did not go away. But when they come to their PLCs, the things that they're discussing, the assessments that they're looking at are on the essential standards that the teachers have determined, not us. So they have buy-in to that. So they know, hey, I determined this. They plan with the end in mind. So they know, okay, this is my assessment. So we're not taking the creativeness out of the teacher. And you have, the teacher can still say, okay, this is the assessment that we're giving at the end. So if I have a teacher who wants to teach out of a basal or one who wants to teach through a novel, it doesn't matter. That's their craft. That's the creativeness of the teacher. But this is what the assessment's going to look like so that we know everybody's getting. That's how we're ensuring that everybody's getting to the same plan. And creating a collaborative culture with a focus on learning. We did the school board and Mr. Poole, which I'm so proud of how they did this. We dismiss that Wednesday, every Wednesday at 2:15. The whole staff comes together, K through 12, in the cafeteria. And we meet from 2:30 to 3:30. We don't meet as a whole group. Everybody meets within their teacher teams. So you've got CTE meeting over in this corner, and they're talking about their standards. You've got third grade in this corner talking about their standards. So everybody's meeting as a team within this whole group. All administration's in there. Everybody's in there. So we have those conversations where we can have those vertically. So that's been really, and we protect that time. It's one of those, we've really gotten famous for our norm knocks. If somebody starts talking about a field trip, that's not essential standard, norm knock. So we norm knock, and that's change in our culture. So we've established a district-wide coalition team. We've always had a campus team, and we've considered that our ACCSIP team, which really was our documentation keepers, our compliance keepers. So now it's become more of an active leading the district coalition team. We have our district-wide intervention team. Who better to tell us about a secondary student who's struggling than an elementary student, who's elementary teacher who's already had them? So with the district-wide intervention team, that fourth grade teacher can say, hey, I remember when this happened to him in fourth grade, and that's probably the reason why he's acting out now in ninth grade. So we can share those stories and understand the student, so kid by kid. And then we have a focused leadership team time. So every Thursday, we meet every Wednesday, every Thursday morning at 8:30, our administration team gets together, and we look at what happened on Wednesday afternoon and what we need to do to support the teachers in order to grow. And focus on results and provide evidence of learning. Mr. Poole says all the time, evidence, evidence, evidence. Where's the evidence? Let's talk about evidence. And that's one of the things with PLC that we have learned is evidence, because we were having, hey, this entire grade level cannot read on grade level. You know, so what's happening? Well, let's really look at this entire grade level, and let's see who's not reading on grade level and which skill that they're missing. So when you determine, oh, really it's 7 students who are not reading on grade level, and they're missing their beginning phonics sound. So now it's really getting down to the nuts and bolts of the student instead of the generalization of this entire grade level. So we have the evidence to prove who. The critical conversations by the student, by the standard, by the name, by the need, by the kid, by the cause. And that's what we're doing with interventions. And that's our focus for this year, is really looking at our intervention and setting that time to help with them. We have created a Google Team Drive. Everybody puts their assessments in this one team drive. They put their essential standards in this one team drive. So I can see, secondary ELA can see what happened in 5th grade ELA. They can look at their assessments. So everybody has access, so they all know that everybody's doing the same thing. And they can look at it if they want to steal ideas to go forward with that. Mutual accountability happens on Wednesday because we're all standing in the same room. And what's so comical is when you're standing in the same room and someone walks into that room late, we're all staring at them. So it's a great mutual accountability in that glass room. Evidence, not assumptions, and facts, not feelings. And so, and we make a lot of decisions on our heart. You know, I feel that we need to do this. I feel we need to do this. And now it's facts, not feelings. The 3 big ideas, this is what Solutions Tree, what PLCs are focused on, is a focus on learning, a collaborative culture, and a focus on results, which we have adopted. And this is the agenda for every Wednesday. When they come into those meetings on Wednesdays, this is their agenda. What do we want students to know? How do we know that they know it? What do we do when they don't? And what do we do when they do? And that drives every conversation. And if you're not driving that conversation, it's not around those questions, that's when the norm knock happens. So, and that's, you know, you've got to hold people accountable when it comes to that. Why PLCs? We're better together. Quality teaching is not an individual accomplishment. It is the result of a collaborative culture that empowers teachers to team up to improve student learning beyond what any one of them can achieve alone. But it's also, you know, the teachers just learning from each other. There's sometimes personality conflicts. And now that we're in a team, you can go, okay, so this works for you. Let me get it to work for me. The power of a team. I can do all things that you cannot. You can do all things that I cannot. And together we can do great things. I think this is very important to hear from a teacher. This is Kelsey Dindy, and she's a 3rd grade teacher. PLC has drastically changed my classroom, and I know that I don't need to read this, and you can read it yourself, but I think it's important that you hear every piece of it. PLC has drastically changed my classroom and myself as a teacher. Last year, for me, was miserable. That's hard for us to hear. I went home each day feeling like I didn't get everything accomplished that I needed to, and I was extremely stressed every day. My RTI consisted of students getting on MobiMax. I knew which kids needed my help, but I didn't know how to help them. At the end of the year, I was actually considering leaving the district or maybe the teaching field altogether. This year is going amazing. I'm not stressed at all. I feel like each day is meaningful. Getting our essential standards identified and making CFAs as a team has made each day run so much smoother. With essential standards, I know that my students need to master. Each student, they keep a data folder with all of our CFAs in them. I have my own data folder where I keep notes on each student so I know what specific skill they need help with. In RTI, I no longer just know what I have kids. In RTI, I no longer just know that I have kids that need my help. I'm able to actually work with them on specific skills that they need to master. I have an amazing team that works together. This year is very positive, and I look forward to seeing how the rest of the year goes. This is Tiffany Moore, a fourth grade teacher. I'm so proud of where we are. When I talk to my friends at other schools, it just makes me so happy to see what a difference we are making. It also makes me sad for kids at other schools that aren't putting in this work. All of your hard work and all the backlash you deal with is so worth it. It is all coming together slowly but surely. This is a text that she had sent to me that I copied and put in. So we've gone through valleys and hills, and she kind of lets you know that, all the hard work and all the backlash, because not everybody is jumping in, and that's just the way it is. I mean, but we are changing a culture, and everything that we address, it's changing our culture. So we will get there. So what's next, and where are we going? What's next is to make this a systemic process. This has got to become ongoing, to create a systemic process that ensures every child receives the additional time and support needed to learn at high levels. And that's where we are right now. We're still unlearning some of the things that we had from the past, and that's been a hard process. It's been one that you're trying to create the buy-in, and some we're not getting buy-in from. That's okay. Get off the bus, because we're not changing PLCs, because we know it works. And like we said at the beginning, thank you so much, because it's working for Prescott, and we'll get there. We'll get there. It's a slow process, and it's not something that happens overnight.
Great. Thank you very
thank
much.
you.
I'll see what questions or comments folks have. Ms. Newton?
First, what's a CFA?
CFA, I'm glad you asked. I shouldn't have put that in there. It's a common formative assessment.
Okay.
Teachers give assessments all the time, but when they give a common formative assessment and they write those assessments, for instance, it may be citing textual evidence, and then they're going to write that common formative assessment before they teach the unit, so that every teacher knows at the end of this lesson, we're given this common formative assessment. So how you get there is the journey that the teacher takes in the classroom, but they know they've got to get to this point. So it makes sure that every teacher gets to the same rigor in their instruction.
Right. I applaud you for the amount of work. You know, you gave a great presentation, but I know it's been months and months of work and hard work on behalf of your staff, and so I applaud you for all of the hard work, because I know it's doing great things for students. You mentioned a while ago, your superintendent mentioned that you didn't think it could have come from just the support of the co-op. What's the difference in the support that you know about that you got from Solution Tree that what a district would get if they went through their co-op?
They've lived it. Every person that works for Solution Tree, matter of fact, they don't even hire anybody for Solution Tree unless they've been through this process within the school and they can live it. So when they're giving us the direction and they're working with us, they're giving it from their testimony. And when we come to a bump in the road, they've been there. And so they can help get us, because it's not a straight path from getting to here, and we take curvy. So when we hit those valleys, I know I can call Solution Tree up and say, okay, this is where we are. Hey, I've been there. This is what you can do. This is what you, so from knowing that they've lived it and they can give you that evidence, that direction based on their experience, makes all the difference in the world.
Well, so as we expand this around the state, are we going to have people that maybe other districts can call, maybe call Prescott or call other places that, if they're gonna need that extra support, how are we gonna get it to, so that we can scale it statewide, I guess?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Newton. That's a great question. And that's our goal, is to have a cadre of professionals in the state who, after they have gone through that 3-year process, or actually, more than 3 years, that we are able to have folks who can be resources, and they are now. I think the second cohort schools are able to call on the first cohort. As we get ready to roll out the third cohort, then they'll have the previous cohorts to be able to call and say, hey, how did you deal with this situation? So, yeah, and Tina can share more about, how we're doing that.
If you don't mind, I'll add to your answer just a little bit. That's already happening.
Right.
We have schools, they know who's in the project, and I'm not sure who and how many times they've had visitors at Prescott, but I know that schools from all over the state are going and visiting teams, and they're calling teams in action, or they're picking up the telephone and calling instructional facilitators or principals or teachers, and that's already happening a lot in the state.
Right.
If it's a school that is not a district, the district is training everyone in their school at the same time. When they have coaching going on in a particular building, then they bring other people who that training pertains to from throughout their district and get them trained as well. So it's happening.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And it's not to say that the co-ops don't have a role, because the content specialists, they can still support on the content side. So I
Right.
think when we talk about the expertise, it's the expertise of developing that culture piece, but you still need support from content. So you have content specialists from co-op, from the department, that are there supporting that element, which is a critical element. But the implementation of professional learning communities it's a different role.
Okay.
Yeah.
To allude to your question, we even invite our specialists from our local co-op to come sit in on our Wednesday meetings. And I know the math specialist has been there just about every time this year to come and join us with that. So we try to include those specialists with us in the co-op. But to go on, Solution Tree specializes in PLCs.
Right.
And our co-op has so many other responsibilities and duties, they just don't have the amount of expertise, knowledge, and resources that Solution Tree has to come and live, like Ms. Wally said, live this experience for us. And so that's where we're at with that. And a lot of times you also have to understand the people that are employed at co-ops are teachers from districts. Like I said, we thought we knew what PLCs were.
Yeah.
They probably thought they knew what PLCs, but you really don't until you live the experience and go in depth and all the things. Everything you've seen here today, this presentation, we knew nothing about it until we started this PLC process.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions?
I just
Ms.
have a
Chambers?
question for the commissioner, but it's related to what you just said. So if the solution tree work you've been doing is largely culture, and we have content providers maybe more at the co-op level, will the co-ops get a chance to more intentionally participate in how to bridge this and spread it faster?
They are. Yeah, so our co-ops and our educational renewal zone partners have embraced this. They are taking opportunities to either participate or host more, broader professional learning communities, professional development, bringing in experts. Tina's been working with that effort as well.
And we invite, anytime we have PLC meetings, when Solution Tree comes in, we invite our co-op people to come down if they want to. We at least give them the invitation, hey, come learn about what's actually going on in PLCs. So we want our co-ops to know more, so they can help and, help other school districts.
So one thing I'll add to what the commissioner said, there has been training all along, but I know that this summer, all of the content specialists, and I can't remember the dates off the top of my head, but Stacy Smith, all of the science and math, STEM, English language arts, those specialists are receiving some specialized training throughout the next year on how would you go in and work in this process and how you coach. So we've been doing general training, and we're moving, it's a process, and we're getting closer to some more, we're getting into some specific training for them.
Thank you.
So, and this is, Tina, this is probably for you. In terms of our knowledge of kind of the evolution of the development of PLCs, full development, how many years, in terms of evidence from around the country, how many years does it take for a PLC to really totally become entrenched in a district?
Well, the best answer is it depends. When I did this work in a district, it took us about almost 5 years to get a model elementary school. We didn't have a lot of support. We're no pressure, Prescott, but we're counting on these schools with the level of support that they have, being able to reach that at the end of their 3-year cohort, because it's very intense. I was just talking with another school district who is doing this on their own and have been doing it. It has taken them 7 years to get there. I think it depends on the will and skill of your leadership. It depends on the will and skill of your teachers as professionals, and so every district is different, which is also part of the beauty of this process. It's not a one-size-fits-all, and so your pace of getting there is dependent on multiple factors. One of those, where you start, and two of those, when you hit those valleys, and when they tell you valleys, they're being very positive today. But I'm telling you, when you confront what people fundamentally believe and change a culture, it's an emotional, hard process. And so when they get, that's part of the reason why it takes so long sometimes. Fortunately and unfortunately for those schools in this process, when they hit those valleys, they can't stop, because they know in a few weeks someone's going to come back and ask for evidence of what they've done to make progress. So they are moving faster than they would otherwise move.
And I assume,
That's not, I can't really give you a definitive answer, but
We see how far we come in 2 years. Like I said before, any of this you've seen today was not possible 2 years ago for our school district. And this is how far we've come. Everything you've seen, what we're doing today, was not being done 2 years ago.
and obviously keeping key personnel in place is crucial to
Yes, absolutely.
keeping it moving faster.
just this week I was visiting with Camden Fairview High School principal. He's been working on this for several years in his building, and he has a great schedule change that he's made for his students that came out of their work of working through this. He has 53 teachers in his building, and I can't remember if he told me this is the 4th year maybe. He's not losing one teacher yet this year. They're all staying. Initially, he lost a bunch, and he shared that, but not this year.
So, and this kind of gets to my question, and Mr. Poole, Ms. Wally, you probably could speak to this. I know Tina can, because, but what this process does, and it's teacher empowering is the best way that I can describe it. When you see a building in a district where it starts clicking, it's driven by the teachers. How are y'all seeing that play out in Prescott?
I mean, just some of the like some of the stories that you've seen, how teachers are, they didn't feel supported before. They feel like they was out there isolated with no help at all. Now, we're about to do is a professional learning, the PLCs, when we meet every Wednesday, the biggest thing I'm getting from my teachers and staff is they feel so much supported. They feel like, they're not in, if they have a problem, there's everybody there to help them get through some of these things. And like I said, one teacher's ready to leave education altogether. Now they want to stay in it. So now it's going to help, our retention with our teachers every year. And it's like, like Camden Fairview and those schools, when they see their teachers are being supported, and they feel like they got all the resources and help that they need, they're going to love their job more, and they're going to stay with it. And like I said, it's more focusing on the students learning as a shield from us from, just all these teaching strategies and techniques and try to make those things work instead of actually focus on the students like PLCs does.
else. Well, in the District Guiding Coalition, we have a representative from every content area and every grade level. So when we make decisions, they're making decisions. And for instance, our last PLC, which we call the Impact the Pack Day, because that's what we're working on when we were out of school for a professional development day. Normally, we would have said, okay, we need to get this training done, this training, or we'll bring someone else to do this. Instead, what we did is we said, okay, what do we need? Where do we need to go? What's our agenda? And then we need time to work on it. We need to revisit our essential standards. I need to get some common form. And I said, okay, what's our evidence at the end of the day? We didn't set that agenda. We empowered the teachers to set that agenda. So that's where they have their teacher empowerment, is they have their representative on the Guiding Coalition and they make the decisions. In another situation, we had one team who was not moving along the same speed as everybody else, and we discussed that. And the way we talk about it in our District Guiding Coalition, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So when we have the conflicts within our teams, we talk about that in the District Guiding Coalition. And one of the teachers said, okay, if you talk to them and they're still not, this was a science teacher, and he said, if you've talked to them and they're still not changing and we don't see the evidence that they're supposed to do, I think it's time that y'all write them up. And I go, okay, we'll talk about that. So it's something that the teacher said, and that didn't come from us, that's the teacher. So they're starting to go, okay, we need everybody to be on board for this. And the teachers are saying, so it's not Mr. Poole saying, I need y'all on board for this. They get upset when they see another team not working.
They hold each other accountable for the process.
No, your quote about teaching doesn't happen till learning takes place. I was fortunate enough to be mentored by Madeline Hunter, who used as her example Coach Wooden at UCLA, and he gave her that quote at the time because he said, unlike a lot of teaching, people know if I have reached my goals. People know if my players have actually learned and therefore have I actually taught. So that's powerful.
It's great to hear from y'all today. Thank you for being here. When the process started, how did y'all undergo that professional development to get started? Did Solution Tree come and do that development for all teachers at your district, or what did that look like?
Yes, they started out, and they sort of guided me on how to address the teachers and staff, to how to get things going, and that started the process. And then they started all the initial meetings up front. They were a part of everything we did from the get-go on that.
And just getting the same vocabulary with that. They came in and just pretty much did a vocabulary overview. So in order to get CFAs and everything that we were talking about with the PLC, so that we would have the same understanding. When we say PLC, it's not just a team meeting, it's a culture change. So they made sure that we had the same vernacular when we discussed things. And
You need to get to the microphone because we're being live streamed.
I don't know if so they did start off. They started off with an overview, a PLC overview. Brian Butler came in, and he's from Solution Tree, and he said, this is the vernacular that when I say this, this is what it means. When I say this, this is what it means. So we were all on the same page when we were going to discuss PLCs, and that's when we first figured out that what we knew as PLCs was not what we knew as PLCs.
That makes sense.
Let me add to that, because like I said at first, I didn't know a whole lot about, or thought I knew a lot about PLCs, and then when the Solution Tree people were here working with us, they said, okay, Mr. Poole, this needs to come from you. I'm like, wait, what? I mean, I'm like, kind of cautious, well, okay, how do I need to handle it? What do we need to do about this? And they would pretty much hold your hand through the whole process of how to implement these things, because they said they know what's worked, they know what's not worked. So it was a smoother transaction or transformation for us getting into this process with their help on that.
That makes sense. What kind of feedback have y'all gotten from students? Because I'm assuming they know that there's been changes. And how do y'all deal with the early dismissal every week?
I really wish I could have brought some students with you to look at. We even brought them to our school board, and they've told our school board how much they welcome the learning this year, and they can tell the difference in the teachers teaching this year. And those are students come to our matter of fact, it was our last school board meeting that we had students there sharing that information with our school board, because our school board likes to hear those things too. Mm-hmm. And they can tell this is making a huge difference in the teaching from where they were last year or 2 years ago and where they are now.
That makes sense. Do y'all add hours on other days of the week to make up that
we
time?
don't dismiss a lot. We have so many minutes banked. We don't get out to like 320 something every day as it is. So we had plenty of instructional minutes.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. House, anything?
Thank you.
Great. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Ms. Smith. And keep up the good work, and we look forward to hearing more
Yes, sir.
about the progress.
Thank y'all.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye. Thank y'all. All right.
Doctor's videos.
Okay, great. Awesome. So we're, next up is Arkansas Teacher of the Year report. I apologize. Never mind. I always, it didn't. I don't know why. Well, it usually doesn't have a presentation with it, and that's why.
I'm usually first. It's all right. Good morning. Before I start this, which I know you're dying to know what this is about, I just want to personally thank you all for last night. On behalf of the teachers who were receiving the recognition last night, it really meant a lot that the board members, that Commissioner Ivy, the Educator Effectiveness team, everybody who worked together to make that happen. I had a teacher pull me aside last night and say, "I've never felt so special." I think we take for granted how little sometimes some teachers are appreciated, and how a nice buffet of appetizers and having the presence of what I call the big heads in education there, what it means. And it really did make a difference last night, so thank you for that. The people who received that recognition really did work hard, and I know y'all were not in there when I did my glorious speech, but that's what my speech was about, is that process to certification sometimes gets glossed over, and how these teachers voluntarily set themselves up for failure, because you go into this knowing this is going to be one of the hardest tasks you ever done in your career. And so I just really wanted to highlight the effort that it took to get them there, and just thank you. So on to this. So this last week? Last week. So Megan Abels approached me a while back saying, you know, I've got these districts that are really doing some cool stuff with teacher leadership. What if we took a road trip and hit like 4 districts, right? And she says, well, you know, we've got these districts, and they're all right there together. They're all right there together. And so, hey, this really happened. I'm being honest. They're all right there together. And so we booked these districts, and as I'm kind of planning our time out, realized that they're not really together. But it worked out great. So this took a lot of planning on getting this set up, but I'm going to walk you through our teacher leadership tour of Arkansas. So we started out... And, well, okay, so we were supposed to start out in here at the department. We were going to meet, but it was a very rainy day, and I was driving from Conway to Little Rock, and on the interstate, my wipers stopped working. And it was one of the scariest, honest to God, one of the scariest moments of my life, because I was driving blind and had to get off the interstate blind. So I pull over in Mayflower and wait for Megan to come find me, which took an hour. And so we started actually in Mayflower and headed south on our journey. And she had this great idea for us to kind of like blog. So we did this video blog during our journey. I just had the cell phone out. I was on my teacher page and just trying to include people into our road trip as well, talking about what we were going to do. So we headed south. Our first stop was Horatio. And what was really neat about Horatio is that we got to sit down with the superintendent, Lee Smith, who talked about how he's paying his teachers incentives for doing micro-credentials, and how that's allowing his teachers to really focus on their areas of growth. And then he's got a scale set up, even if it matches the goals of the district, the ESSA goals of the district, they get paid more money. And so it's encouraging teachers to learn on their own. And what I thought was really cool is he himself is taking a micro-credential so that he can learn the process and understand when his teachers are going, this is a lot of work. He actually knows that. He's basing this model off of Michael Fullen's work with distributed leadership, so that all the leadership is not sitting in the administration, that he's building capacity in his teachers to lead. And so we were able to sit down with him and just have this kind of roundtable conversation. We recorded a great video that we'll be pushing out pretty soon with lots more information about that. And we also got to meet a teacher there who has completed the micro-credential for the teacher lead professional educator. That is hard to say. Lead professional educator designation on her license here for the career continuum. And so she was able to record a video for us because so many teachers don't know what a micro-credential is. I didn't know before this year. And so she kind of walked through what the challenges were, what it looked like, to kind of alleviate some misconceptions as well. So after that, we hopped back in the car and headed north to DeQueen. And really, DeQueen has been on our list of places just to go see. This is a district that's really what I would call beating the odds. They have a very unique population where they're 60% Hispanic. They've got a growing Marshallese population as well, and they're 75% free and reduced. All their schools are A and B schools. So they are really doing something unique there, and so we wanted to go and just talk to them and ask them, what are y'all doing? And the way they addressed it was by introducing us to Miss Gutierrez, who was someone who grew up in this community, faced enormous barriers. She was an immigrant and taught herself to read. Had this dream of going to college, and everything that could come up to prevent her from accomplishing that dream happened. Her family didn't want her to go to college. They almost resisted this. But she continued on, and now she teaches in the elementary there. And she stood before us and said, I have my dream job. That's something. And so she also recorded a welcome to my classroom video. I'm sure you've seen those around in Spanish for us. So we're really excited to roll that out soon too as well. And we just really came down to just communication and that sense of community. The people in this district understand that these kids are our kids, and they're going to do whatever those kids need. And it may not look like what you think it does, but they're going to do whatever those kids need. And so this was really neat. So then we headed further north. And so we actually stopped for the evening in Van Buren. We stayed in Van Buren, and then that morning got up and drove to Cedarville. And we met with somebody y'all should recognize, Miss Courtney Cochran, who was the 2017 Teacher of the Year, who is now the principal at Cedarville High School. And the reason we met with her is because she's in the baby stages of doing some teacher leadership things in her building. She has a few lead teachers that she gives them one period off to do their leadership. And so we really just wanted to talk to her about how she's doing that from the baby stages up. And we recorded a video with her as well, so that will be rolling out. And it was just really good to catch up with her because, she's one of us. So after that, then we headed even further north to where we went to Springdale. So at Springdale, we had a meeting set up, and I did not take a single picture because we were taking page after page after page of notes. But we met with Dr. Morledge, who Ms. Zook knows, and a large group of their instructional specialists because they've been doing teacher leadership in some capacity for a long time. And so they walked us through their new system, and it's a very structured method they have where they have the teachers in the buildings who have instructional facilitators in the building who are basically content specialists. So if you have content questions, you go there. Outside of that, they have instructional specialists who are basically masters of pedagogy, so that they're not really content focused, but they just know best strategies and can kind of help a wide variety of teachers. And so we sat there and wrote and just try to get as much as we could get out of them, because I know one of the things that we're trying to release with the Career Continuum is some information for administrators, because that's the one kickback we've gotten is, okay, great, we've got these lead teachers now, we've got these master teachers, what do we do with them? And so we're wanting to put together a 4-page information document so that these administrators can know, well, what can I do to support them? What kind of supports do they need? So why is this important? We all know that the most important aspect of a classroom is an effective teacher, and the goal is to keep our effective teachers in the classroom. While they're in their classroom, though, we want to extend their reach. An effective teacher reaching more children, that's gold right there. Empowerment, boosting morale, improving your culture of your school. Distributed leadership allows administration to focus on growth goals. Novice teachers having access to experts in the field and establishing the capacity in others. So right now in Arkansas, our little happy Arkansas there, we have 14 lead professional designations, and those are the ones that were participating in the pilot, and so those will grow as the year is completed. This hasn't officially rolled out to the masses yet. And we have 16 master professional designations, and that will grow because everybody who was at the reception last night was invited to begin their process of obtaining their master designation, because as a national board teacher, you are qualified. And so these numbers will grow. So we're really excited to start empowering our teachers more. And I'm just so thankful for the work that's going on here at the department to help elevate teacher voices and keeping those teachers in the classrooms.
Great. Thank you, Ms. House. Any comments or questions? Wonderful. Thank you all for sharing your road show. And thank you, Ms. House, for everything. All right. And now we will head to the co-ops. And so we have Guy Fenter, reevaluation, and Crowley's Ridge.
Good morning, Commissioner Key, Chairman Barth, members of the board. I am Frank Servideo, and I am pinch hitting this morning for Dr. Mike Hernandez, who asked me to present to you the results of our recent reevaluations of 2 of the co-ops. As you know, interesting that you said, Dr. Barth, we now travel to the co-ops. I said, that's what we spent all last year doing, traveling around the state, co-op to co-op. And last year you received the results of the 15 co-op evaluations. A couple of them had to be reevaluated this year, and that's what I'm here to report on today. In essence, we are looking at Guy Fenter Co-op and Crowley's Ridge Co-op, and in essence, they are virtually identical. If it's okay with you, I will just report that the results are the same for both co-ops. So when we did the original evaluation, as you're aware, the rubric, which runs on a scale of 1 to 5, doesn't allow, in some cases, for a partial score. And so these 2 co-ops received a 1 in one of the areas, possibly 2 of the areas, I'm not really sure exactly, but that by rule meant that they couldn't get a higher score, because if you got 1 in any one of the 9 areas, then that was problematic. So in essence, we did the entire evaluation again this year. We did one of them in January, one of them in February, and I am happy to report that when we did the evaluations this year, their scores were significantly greater. In fact, they were all 5s and 4s. In fact, I think there was only 1 4 in the entire bunch. Basically, the reason was that there was an issue with the surveys. I believe it was the user satisfaction survey. And in some cases, there just weren't enough responses for the survey results to be viable. There were a variety of reasons why the surveys didn't receive as much response as they should have, but they were easily, problems that were easily fixed. And this year, the results were significantly greater. As a result, and the result of the reevaluation, the scores were all superb, and so the co-ops, I guess, would say passed. And in a nutshell, that's the report, and I do believe that some co-op members are here if anyone has any questions, and obviously if you have any questions for me, I'd be more than happy to field those now.
Were you on visits both years?
I was,
okay.
Yes, I was I was the ADE representative for the team.
And so, what, as somebody who actually saw the before and after, I mean, what were you, could you feel something, culturally different between the 2 visits, or was it more tweaking that just, sharpen some operations?
No, actually, personally, I believe that the evaluations were fine in both
The first
cases.
year.
And there
It was
wasn't
really that
really a cultural
one
difference.
survey.
There was an obvious attempt to better perform or conduct the surveys and make sure we got the results back. But the other parts of the evaluation on the first evaluation were just as good as they were on the second part. So.
Okay, great. Any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, just, if y'all remember, there was concern at the time from both of those co-ops that this somehow was going to be a black mark against the co-ops, or that this board or the department might look disfavorably on them. And at that time, I communicated to you, I communicated to the co-ops that this, what our view on this is, it's a tool to help us all get better. And I think this was borne out with their efforts to get better at getting the right information, getting the surveys. So we're, in one case, you even had a change in leadership. I think Crowley's
That's
Ridge
correct. Mm-hmm.
changed directors from the previous year to this year. And we didn't see any, at least nothing reported to me, no hiccup in services or relationships or anything like that, internally or externally with that co-op. So I feel like we have a better process of evaluation and improvement than what we did several years ago when we first started talking about this in this setting. So I want to just express appreciation to the team from Guy Fenner Co-op, also to Crowley's, because I think they better understand what we're trying to do to help all of our partners get better and help ourselves get better.
Great. Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, now, yes, you may. So we'll come back at 10:25. You get 7 minutes.
one that's in Fayetteville. She can get you some more information. They had to give her that.
Obviously, I can't eat that much chocolate because about 3 this morning
I had a weird, I woke up in the middle
I
of the
think
night.
it was the chocolate, the caffeine or the sweets or the something.
Maybe something else.
There you have it. We'll have those.
Yeah.
Susan?
Yeah, he's had it, there's, as soon as they started doing these scans, they found that too. He's like, let's just sit and watch it, and the doctor's like, I think it'll mutate and lose his box.
Oh, I know, she always dresses so cute.
That was the first cancer he had.
Yeah. Actually, he just looks at that.
All right. Welcome back for the stretch run. My report is the main thing I wanted to talk about. I did a webinar a couple weeks ago, co-sponsored by Child Trends and NASB, on the whole school, whole community, whole child model, and the way in which Arkansas is really implementing elements of thinking about the WSCC model, and got to brag a lot on our work on family engagement, on school discipline, the counselors legislation to really focus counselors on student-centered work, the school-based mental health care grant. I think it went pretty well, and so great to kind of put that together. All those pieces, I think that model of thinking about the whole community, whole school, whole community, whole child really does begin to put a lot of the pieces of the things that we've been working on as a board and as a state together. And I thank Ms. Friedman for helping me kind of get ready for that with some talking points. That's all I have. Anybody have anything that won't be in the reports, the committee reports later on? Okay, then we'll get going with that. And Commissioner?
Thank you, Dr. Barth. We have linked to your agenda the update for the 2019 Ccsso Equity Update. Over the weekend, Dr. Pfeffer and I attended the Ccsso Legislative Conference in Washington. And those of you who were here in 2017, you remember Ccsso issued its first equity, in essence, platform and the elements of that platform. And we have been working on a number of those things that were there, that were identified in that document. This document gives updates and highlights of different things happening in the states. So I would just ask that you review that at your leisure. We also got to hear and exchange a lot of information and just had good interactions with our colleagues in other states. And what we learned was that all the states are in some form or fashion really going the same direction that we are in response to the Every Student Succeeds Act, creating conditions where the departments are trying to be more supportive of their districts and schools rather than being more of a compliance and enforcement mentality. So a lot of parallels, a lot of similarities in the strategies that are being used across the states, but we did learn some things. For instance, Georgia, and kind of linked to what you just mentioned, Dr. Barth, Georgia has placed in their co-ops positions that are wraparound service coordinators, in line with that whole child thought process, and they are seeing success with that, and those coordinators working to help their districts set up, what are the resources available for wraparound, for mental health, for outside of school feeding and those types of things. So it's something that Dr. Pfeffer and I made some notes, and we'll be looking at, is that something that we could create in some form or fashion here in Arkansas. I think we are ahead of the game with respect to family and community engagement. I mean, just the work that we have heard from other states and the work that we know is going on here. States are asking us, for information, so we're trying to make those connections. So we don't have anything highlighted specifically in this report that we've linked, but there are a number of things that Ccsso has acknowledged that probably will be something that will be highlighted in future communications and future documents. Just a short, fun piece. Gina was with us also for part of the day, the weekend, because she was attending the NASB conference. Hadi Partovi from Code.org was a keynote in the joint NASB and Ccsso dinner, and we were very disappointed because he didn't highlight Arkansas, and so all three of us were kind of looking at each other wondering, why didn't he say anything about Arkansas? But he called out Nebraska and Iowa and Maine. He kind of used the same tactic the governor has used when he's gone to school visits, and he would ask directly, are you doing computer science? And if they said no, then governor would say, you need to do that. So that's what Hadi did to the state chiefs and the state boards. He said, those of you that are not colored in on this map, you need to get on board. So I asked him later at the private reception, I said, well, we were really disappointed that you didn't highlight Arkansas. And he said, yeah, I felt bad about not giving you guys props, but I really felt like I needed to call out the other ones first. So he did recognize that we are still at the top of the list when it comes to implementing all those elements and strategies of Code.org. So that was good to hear. We also had the opportunity to visit some members of our congressional delegation, but the highlight was in the Madison building of the Library of Congress. There's this very nondescript door. It's a metal door, looks very industrial, but the sign on it says Surplus Books Program. And so my peer pressure, Gina, said, well, let's just go in. It's had visitors hours, but it didn't look like visitors hours. So we opened the door. There were two gentlemen in there, and the head of that unit came out of his cubicle, and he was so glad to see us. Obviously, they don't get a lot of visitors. And there were these cages with shelves upon shelves upon shelves of books. And what we learned is the Library of Congress sends books at the request of members of Congress to libraries, to schools in their states. And so some of our schools have participated or are participating in that, but we were not aware, and that's something that we feel like is an opportunity to spread the word and they get these books from the publishing companies because they have to be submitted. So many copies have to be submitted. The copyright office gets whatever copies they get. In time they send them, and then donations. So estates, or as it started with Thomas Jefferson's estate and Congress buying his library, that still happens today. So it's pretty fascinating that we had the opportunity to hopefully tap into a resource that not all of our districts are aware of. I think, let's see, the last thing I want to talk about is, as you know, we ended the legislative session this week. Before the session, we presented you with the package from the department, and I'm happy to say that we were successful with all of our bills. There was one bill that we chose not to file, dealing with facilities and the new law that passed in 2017 on access to charter schools. When we drafted that, started having conversations, we just felt like the rules that we have now take care of that issue. So, but the highlights of the things that I know you all were interested in, our discipline bill, House Bill 1398, which is now Act 640. That was well received by the committees, by the legislature. We were not able to get Dr. Hill and our schedules, the way his schedules and the legislative schedules worked, didn't work. But Ms. Dean was there for one of those meetings and was able to represent the board as we presented that. The other one I think you all had a lot of interest in was dealing with Act 1240 waivers, and we were successful in passing that, which limits the Act 1240 waivers to 5 years and also gives us rule-making authority. So that is something our legal team, I believe, they are already working on the rules for all of these pieces of legislation. So that, I'm trying to see if we have had, as of yesterday, the governor had signed all but 2 of our bills, and I think that still appears to be the same today. I think he still has a stack of bills that have not been signed yet, but we don't anticipate any problem. The 2 bills that have yet to be signed were changes to the fiscal distress law and changes to the facilities accountability law. But with those, all of our package, 15 bills total, will become law. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? All right.
I think it was nice that you all sent out periodic notices about this is what's been done. You know, we oppose this, we're for this, we're neutral on this, because that helped keep us up as we go, because if you wait till the end, it's a little bit overwhelming, or at least for me it is.
And I recognize that it was a little late in the session when we started, maybe midway through the session or so when we started doing that. That's something that we really should have started at the beginning in 2019 or 2021. Wow, that's hard to even say. 2021, we will make sure that's just part of the routine for communication to the board members.
Great. Excellent. All right. Then we go down to the standing committees and liaisons. Why don't we, about family engagement?
We have been busy. The team has been doing an awesome job, a phenomenal job with our toolkit. Just to give you an update, in February, on February 21st, the Coalition, the Department of Human Services, the Division of Child Care and Early Childhood Education, and Teacher Leader Advisory Group stakeholders met to provide toolkit resources. That toolkit that we've been developing, we got the skeleton work done. Now it was up to putting in, inserting all of those resources from all over the state, best practices, things of that sort. So over 175 resources were added to the toolkit with a focus on leadership, school program, schools and programs, staff, stakeholder support, innovation, and family and community-friendly schools. The resources have been reviewed and they've been vetted through a continuous two-layered process of review by the Office of Family and Community Engagement and review by our cross-division team. I was able to provide arrangements for them to have lunch while they did all of that, and there's part of the team there. So that was in February. In March 1st, in Plumerville, they presented an overview of the process and content of the framework to the Arkansas Parent Coordinators Association, APCA. On the 2nd, they met with leaders within DHS, Division of Child Care and Early Childhood Education to focus on the coordination of the two family and community engagement tools, future ways of work for joint dissemination, professional development, and assessing the tool's effectiveness through researching assessment options. On the 19th, in Little Rock, stakeholders that represented parents, students, community partners, school districts, parent coordinators, early childhood education, and the state's PTA organization all identified primary options regarding formatting and focus on the guide design. In response, the team called together a group of stakeholders to discuss the options. They also identified and added elements that should be considered in the design, such as platform, colors used, and options when searching for content. What they're trying to do is make this as user-friendly as possible for all of our stakeholders included, parents and everyone included. Enhanced internal cross-collaboration between state and federal has occurred, resulting in the streamlining of processes to be more timely in responding to LEA needs, and more importantly, to be proactive to needs. Right now, our current focus is to research assessment options for local LEAs for family and community engagement. Number 2, streamline parental involvement plans on the federal and state level for the supports and feedback processes for immediate LEA supports. When it comes to the essentials and the toolkit, the guide essentials and the toolkit, we need to finalize all portions of that in a Google site. I think that was the newest thing. A Google site, which is a user-friendly format that has searchability and mobile-friendly features. And it needs to be distributed and utilized as well. It needs to be distributed. We need to communicate the purpose of the guide. So that we're trying to get into our rollout now. So we need to communicate the purpose of the guide, which is to assist with engaging families, schools, and communities in two-way communication, offer helpful resources for enhancing engagement within local schools and communities, encourage conversations. We've had great conversations around this. Increase support for families, schools, and community members to be actively engaged in children's development and education. And these guide essentials and the toolkit were developed by the Arkansas Department of Education in partnership with the State Board of Education, Arkansas Family and Community Engagement Coalition, the Department of Human Services, the Division of Child Care and Early Childhood Education, and Arkansas stakeholders, our parents, our students, our community members. We will have professional development. That's our next thing on the agenda. We will have a train the trainer module. We'll have several of those all over the state. And I believe the commissioner is going to have a memo coming up on that or posted. The Office of Family and Community Engagement is working currently on the development of a train the trainer module to be delivered this spring. The initial audience will focus on district parent coordinators and facilitators. The trainings are from 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. On May 6th, it will be in Dawson. May 7th will be Southeast Arkansas. May 9th will be Crowley's Ridge. May 10th, Northwest Arkansas. May 13th, Philander Smith. So it's going to be back to back to back. So what we're trying to do is get all of our people ready and trained so that we can begin the rollout and get these to our districts. Feedback loops will be used in the spring of 2019 regarding report card feedback and incorporated into the Train the Trainer module. I also have, let's see, I've got locations. May 3rd will be at Sheridan Elementary. And they'll set up a booth at the community-wide reading event. I think this will be how they'll kind of let people know what's going on. And that will be for educators, parents, and community members. That's a day event. Don't have a time for that yet. On May 6th through the 9th, the co-ops with facilitators and coordinators will have a focus group, and that'll be at the end of each day session, and that will be from 2 to 2:30, and that will be for facilitators, coordinators, educators, and parents. We'll have an evening session for all stakeholders. We don't have the time for that yet, but May 14th through 16th will be all-day events, and that will be at the Rural Development Conference, and they'll have a booth there for 3 days, May 14th through 16th. Louis Farron, LaDonna Spain, Kim Wright, and Chelsea Moore will be there. And that will be, the attendees will be the mayors, county judges, legislators, community leaders, state and federal officials. June 18th through the 21st will be the 2019 ADE Summit. We'll have a booth and a table there, and that will be just for educators. And the last date will be June, the same date. And that will be at the summit, June 18th through 21st, and they'll have pop-up sessions for educators there. This team has been phenomenal. They are excellent, and they are moving forward and at a phenomenal pace. And I just want to thank again Commissioner Key for designating staff members to really put their full time and attention to helping the community and families get the tools and the information that they need to be more engaged in our students' education. I believe that's I think it's going to be a huge part of putting Arkansas on the forefront for student-led and student-focused education. So thank you. Thank you, team.
Great.
And just to follow up, that commissioner's memo went out yesterday.
Oh, it did? Okay.
Yep. So if you want the number, it is COM 19-098.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any questions? All right, excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you all for all your continued work. All right, Ms. Hook, on forward?
Nothing?
Okay. Ms. Newton on S.
We met on Wednesday, March 27th. Ms. Kaufman and her team reported to us that the amendment had been approved. I think we had already heard that, but that will allow now the report cards to match what is in the amendment. Ms. Worsham told us that the alignment study had been completed and that information had been shared with the TAC, and there should be a report published soon. And then Ms. Kaufman and her team told us that report cards will be issued on April 15th, and she's got some information that she's going to share with us about report cards.
Cool. Welcome.
You can pass this out now.
Ms. Zook's going to be my helper. Good morning.
Good morning.
Have I mentioned report cards to you lately? Do you feel like? Monday is the day. We anticipate that report cards will be live to the public at 8 a.m. I think Commissioner Key may not know, but I think we're going to let him push the button. Exciting. When we think about school report card, what's going to be interesting as the public goes in there, it's going to take a little longer for the box to build. these reports are quite lengthy. So my first caution is don't hit print before you have a chance to really look at it. They range between 45 and 100 plus pages per school. So we're excited about the work. I want you to know that every division here in the agency, plus many of our partners, have been involved in putting this report card together. It truly is a comprehensive report. Argent's team has worked day and night and weekends, and if you see them, wake them up and congratulate them on a job well done. Dr. Arola's team ran the data, reran the data, ran it again just to make sure that we were accurate. I can tell you that in our feedback loop, where we put the data out privately to the school districts, they're coming back with really great suggestions, but we didn't have any data corrections this year for the very first time. So that's just a tribute to how many times our teams have run the data and how well Argent's team's written the code to take that data in and put it into reports to school districts. You're going to be able to see school reports, district reports, and then there is a state report. As you open those up, you're going to see a lot more text on those reports, and you're going to see those new hover over features. There are new definitions, there's new FAQs on this page, a new letter from the commissioner. So there are a lot of new features. You're going to see the tab has changed to say report card. All of it being housed in a user-friendly format on My School Info. So lots of changes, and those changes came about because of the feedback that we got last summer from stakeholders all across the state when Battelle for Kids came in with us and helped us with those focus groups. So we already see those upgrades. What I needed to tell you is about the requirements. So when we went out last year in the focus groups, some of the feedback was, there's too much here. You need to trim this down. And it's important to note that there are 19 modules of data in the school report card alone. That's outside of the Ccsso index, an in-depth discipline report, the waiver reports that we keep in My School Info. But there are 19 data modules. 10 of those modules are brand new this year. These are a result of state and/or federal requirements. So a little state, a lot of federal requirements. So if a parent says or a patron says to you, this is too much, you need to trim it down, that's not an option. So our focus is on how do we make that information more understandable? How do we make it more user-friendly? So how do we help people understand that the data in the report card, which as you go in and look at it, it's going to be broken down by a very long list of subgroups, is different from the data that will be in the next tab of the Ccsso index. That Ccsso index is accountability. It's weighted. There are groups of kids that are excluded based on what the issue is. If they're mobile, they're excluded from many of the components. In the report card data, by federal definition, we have no exclusions. In fact, we have more inclusions than ever considered in accountability, and there are no weights. So nothing is weighted, there are no values, it's just the facts. So in looking at those facts, the reason that you have this information and the reason that there are state and federal requirements is that data should be available. We should be transparent with that data, but we need that data to be able to make really wise decisions about how we move forward with school improvement. We have to know what we do well so that we can sustain those things, and then we have to know the areas where we may need to improve. This is like my first visit to the, I call them the spot and dot doctor, the dermatologist. When you turn 50, you have to go to the dermatologist, and basically they look at every inch of you. And I would say, oh, look at this spot. Nah, that's nothing. And the doctor would say, oh, but look at this spot. This is something we really need to pay attention to. That's exactly what we do with this report card. It's all the spots and dots. So what I encourage us to do is make sure that we understand the data. So I hope that as we're having conversations about schools, that we first take the opportunity to celebrate. You saw 2 amazing kids yesterday. They went to Arkansas schools. You saw another group of amazing future educators. They went to Arkansas schools. So we have many wonderful teachers, as you've seen, as our Teacher of the Year, and her colleagues have traveled around and they've told you about wonderful teachers. We have wonderful principals, wonderful superintendents, wonderful school boards. A lot of people dedicating their time to providing a quality education for Arkansas students. But even all of those wonderful people, they know that there are great things going on in their school and there's always room for improvement. This report card breaks it all out. It lets you look to see and ensure that you're not missing a group of kids, that you've not overlooked an area for concern. So it helps you to look at your data, prioritize what you need to work on. It's also an opportunity for school districts to tell their story. We put out the ESSA School Index out in October, and we encourage our school districts, look at it ahead of time. Get your stories ready. Tell your story to the public. We need engagement from our public. Steen just went over our plan for more engagement. But at every level, people need to be engaged. People need to be engaged around the facts, around the data. If we're going to say something about our school, back it up with the data. So we encourage everyone to go to My School Info. We encourage you to open up, click on every button in there, open up everything, look at it. Arjit can fix it if you break it, but I don't believe you will. We do really, really, really encourage people to know the schools. Don't go on what someone else tells you. Go in and really look. Are they serving students with special needs? Go look. Are their kids growing? Are their GT kids doing well? Go look. The data's all there. So this is really a call to action. This report card is not an event. So Monday at 8, when Arjit and the commissioner make it live to the public, we'll see a spike in our usage. But I think our state deserves to use this as an invitation. This is an invitation to know the schools, to be a part of the solutions in helping to improve those schools, and an invitation to be engaged. So if we look at it that way, then we're all parts of the solution. Thank you.
Great. Questions? Fantastic. Ms. Newton, that's it? All right. Public school accountability, Ms. Zook, anything else?
We shared
Okay.
the presentation.
That's what I
think the takeaway is, to use her analogy about the dermatologist, when you go, there's a lot more skin that has no spots than does. So let's look at the positive, and then as we can help, focus in on what we can do to help people get better. But there's a lot more good going on than bad, and so we need to emphasize the positive.
Great. Ms. Chambers, anything on human resources? Okay. All right. And then NASB, I know you, Ms. Newton, you were not able to go, and so Ms. Wendell, anything else to add from your experience, your first NASB? Sorry to put you on the spot. But.
Good morning, Jean Wendell. So I was able to go to the NASB Legislative Conference, and it was really great connecting to other board members from other states, hearing about their procedures, their governance policies, their struggles. their successes. I did pick up some policy briefs on some different things that I'm going to be scanning and emailing out to you all so you can stay up to date on the things that were covered and what I learned while I was there. So next year you should all plan to go with me.
Indeed. And then the fall meeting is in, blanking where it is.
Nebraska. It's in Nebraska.
In Lincoln? Omaha.
It's in Nebraska.
In Omaha. It's in Omaha.
Yes.
It's in Omaha. It's close. Okay.
Yes.
All right. All right. And then special education, Ms. Hook?
Yes, the highlights are, we passed, I don't remember if it was March or February, the alternative pathways to graduation for the severely cognitively involved, and so they're out working on that. Also, working also with the Council of Chief State Officers on guidance documents for identifying English learners who may have disabilities. And in addition to that, working within the department and encouraging the schools to also not have the special ed silo, but work equally with everyone, because every child has some sort of talent or gift, and every child may need some help. And so trying to get all of the schools and within the department to focus on the child as a whole, not just partial.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. All right. And then next up is the nominating committee report. As y'all remember, the nominating committee is acting a month earlier this year as our operating procedures change. I asked Ms. Chambers to chair that. Mr. Williamson and Ms. Newton also served as the three members on the nominating committee. And just a quick reminder, the committee reports the nominations at this meeting. After the nominating committee makes its nominations, I will call for nominations from other board members, and a member need not be recognized by the chair to name a nomination, and no second is required. So basically, self-nominations would also be in order according to our procedures. So, and if someone wishes not to serve, you can decline the nomination, and the nominating committee will make a new nomination. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Chambers.
Thank you, Dr. Barth. Would like to thank the committee for the very thoughtful conversations that were put forward that resulted in our recommendation in terms of nomination. It kind of, they're in the theme of many of the updates this morning. I think it's an opportunity for us as a board to continue to think about our own continuous improvement. How do we continue to change and develop so that we're even more aligned with where the opportunities are for the students of Arkansas? So we're hopeful that some of that fruitful conversation could find its way into some of our development, maybe even this summer, as we go through our own development as a board. But that discussion resulted in a recommendation for chair and vice chair. And if this is appropriate, and I don't know about the self-nominating part, but in terms of the nominating committee, we would recommend Ms. Diane Zook for chair and Ms. Sharice Dean as vice chair for the 1920 academic year.
Great. Okay. Are there other nominations at this time? Okay. And there's also an opportunity to ask questions of the nominees according to our operating procedures, if anyone has questions. All right. I think we've done that procedurally, even without Ms. Hyatt here to chastise me. I think we've done it right. So we will vote by roll call at the at the May meeting. That would be wrong. At the May meeting, and then of course the officers would take office July 1, as is our normal procedure. All right. Thank y'all. Thanks, Ms. Hook. Thanks, Ms. Dean. Assuming y'all are going to be the only nominees. Okay.
Thank you to the committee.
Yes, thank you.
All Any new business? Okay. We do have one request for public comment, and so I would entertain a motion to hear public comment.
So moved.
All right, motion by Ms. Zook, second by Ms. Dean. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Great. And Becky Pittman is here. And Ms. Pittman, you have up to 3 minutes.
Okay, hi. Thank you so much for letting me come up and speak. I have some notes on my iPhone, so forgive me if I look down a little bit. Again, my name is Becky Pittman. I'm the mother of 3 kids in the Little Rock School District. And I wanted to ask some questions of you, Commissioner Key. And I understand that you may not be able to answer anything at this meeting right now, but I just wanted to express some things that we parents are wondering about. One thing that's recently come to our attention is that the LRSD pre-K director was misusing some district funds. On looking into that a little bit, I saw that she was not fired, she resigned. She was allowed to resign. And it was there were several months between the discovery of this misuse of funds and her, and the time that she stopped working. So, and stopped being paid also for that work. So we were just wondering about what the process was surrounding that and why it took so long, and also why she was allowed to resign. So that's the first question, and I want to go ahead and get the second question in before I run out of time. Also, we recently learned about the new exit criteria for the schools. And we also recently learned about the new efforts to provide dyslexia and literacy support to the district, which that's a wonderful thing. But the question that I have is, why did it take 4.5 years for that criteria to be laid out, and why did it take 4.5 years to get very aggressive about the literacy and dyslexia support? Is there a new sense of urgency around those things? That's all.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Pittman.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
So thank you for your questions, and happy to answer what I can. The issue with the pre-K director is that's a personnel issue. It would be inappropriate for me. I would recommend you direct those types of questions to the district. Okay. The second, the exit criteria, that is something that came about as of the Act 930 of 2017. If you recall, the exit criteria under the old academic distress was a school had to get out of academic distress, it had to meet 49.5% of its students, or above 49.5% scoring proficiency on originally the old benchmark, and then it went into the PARC. So that exit criteria simply was the only thing that was there and no longer applies after the 2017 Act, which went into effect in late 2017, and the rules were approved finally that were enabling the full action and implementation of that law in October of 2018. So whereas it seems that it was 4.5 years, the reality was that the exit criteria came about as a result of new legislation. The urgency on dyslexia and literacy, that's always been there from our standpoint. I think just from the discussions of the board and the request brought by Ms. Zook and agreed upon by the board to dig deeper, that's an effort that when we dug deeper, that's when we found the many issues. So now we have a plan in place to support the district in, one, adopting a literacy curriculum that is supportive of what we need to be doing, and identifying what those resources are and the personnel that need to be in place to actually carry out a dyslexia plan. So that those would be the responses that I would have to those inquiries.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for the answer. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your engagement.
Absolutely.
All right. Fantastic. All right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Ms. Dean. Second by Mr. Williamson. All in favor say aye. Aye. All right. Safe journey.
celebrating the Arkansas Signing Day and the commitments to education. So I don't want anyone to forget about that.
Very good.